Tranquility du Jour, May 31st, 2019.
Bask in a day-long masterclass for living life with more tranquility, creativity, and style while noshing at a world-renowned plant-based restaurant. Mingle with other members of the TDJ community and dream big. Join us for TDJ Soirée, June 9th in Washington, D.C. Limited spots remain. Learn more at KimberlyWilson.com/soiree.
Hello there, this is Kimberly Wilson and welcome to the 456th edition of Tranquility du Jour, a podcast featuring artists, authors, and activists making a difference around the globe. Today I'm chatting with a dear person, Christy Natsumi, and she is a fine jewelry designer in San Francisco and also was an assistant and a dear part of my life many years ago. I think it was about 13. And we talk about how she got started as a jewelry designer. And I remember when she was taking these classes, our work together, which we had some pretty funny moments, and her cross-country move to create in San Francisco and the community that she's found there. So you're going to learn quite a bit and get a 20% off coupon code to shop her gorgeous handmade fine jewelry. And you can find out more about that later in the podcast and in the show notes, which can be found at KimberlyWilson.com/456. Now, before we dive into chatting with Christy, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who's been so enthusiastic about the upcoming release of the Tranquility du Jour daybook. So this is 272 pages. And what's wild about that, it's like 72 pages more than it's ever been. As you can see, I got a little carried away with adding a lot of new additions. And I also put in 5 weeks for every month. With it being dateless, you never know, right? When it's going to be 4 weeks, 5 weeks, etc. So there's 60 weeks in the daybook, of course, 4 seasons, of course, 12 months, but there's also how-tos for creativity, for yoga, for mindfulness, and then also journal writing. So what's kind of fun is there's more, of course, that I wanted to add. And at some point you're just like, okay, it's 272 pages. Let's stop here. But what I'm going to do is with those pages that I'm like, oh, I want to put this in, is I'm going to have some downloadable PDFs that you can get as a bonus whenever you purchase the daybook. And the daybook's going to be available only on Amazon right now. So what's great about that is you can order it through your Amazon account. And what you would do then is head on over to KimberlyWilson.com and click on the little box about the daybook, and then you'll be taken to the page where you can insert for your daybook bonuses. And what is really kind of fun about that is it allows you to have access to these additional PDFs and those PDFs that you're like, oh, I don't want to write in them in my pretty daybook. I want, to have more of them or what have you. And so those are going to be available. And then also there's a Spotify playlist of lots of fun French tunes. And then I'm also going to be doing an online workshop where I walk you through how to use and set up your daybook. And that's going to be available at the end of the month. But anyway, all these bonuses are yours, and all you have to do is put in your Amazon order code. Now, it is also available as a PDF for anyone who's like, oh, I want to download it, print, and do it on my own. Just so you know, 272 color pages does get a bit pricey. So just keep that in mind, because sometimes people are surprised when they go to the print shop and they're like, print this out for me. So what is great about the Amazon one is that although it's perfectly bound, and that just means that it is a soft cover, because unfortunately they don't have spiral. I know a lot of people like for their planners to be spiral so that they can lay them flat. And if that is what you want, the great news is, from what I understand, turning a book into a spiral book is typically less than $10 and can be done at Kinko's, at, Staples, Office Depot, or your local print shop. And so that's just an option for those of you who want that. Some of you may be perfectly happy with a perfectly bound book. But anyway, I just want to let you know in the next 24 hours, it should be out on Amazon, and I hope you love it. And I really want your feedback and your input. And, over the years since we've been doing this, since freaking 2012, every new edition, I take your input and I make changes, and I just feel like the evolution of it from 2012 to this edition, which is really, believe it or not, the 7th edition, has just become more and more beautiful, and I hope to more and more useful to you. And again, this isn't like, okay, how can I be so productive and get so much done? Although I do think that does lead to us feeling, to a degree, hopefully not as overwhelmed as it does like feeling that we're contributing, right, in some way to society, to our communities, to our family. So productivity is important, yet it's important to balance it with tranquility, right? With those sweet, simple moments to pause and to, be out in nature and to spend time with friends and family. And so in this, I have 32 tools and all these checklists and ideas on, ways in which we can infuse our days with more tranquility. So I really, really hope you love it. And I just want to say a big thank you to those of you who have supported it for so freaking many years. Now, anyone who's new to Tranquility du Jour, there's a link in the show notes where you can learn more about us, what we're doing, what we stand for, etc. And then also, you can sign up for our bi-weekly love notes and access to Tranquil Treasures, which is MP3s, PDFs, etc. I'm going to be getting a love note out over the weekend. So if you are not yet subscribed, you can do that and join us and get a little dose of love into your inbox this weekend. Now, upcoming next freaking Saturday, I can't believe it, is our 4th annual Yoga and the Animals at Burleigh Manor Animal Sanctuary. There's still a few tickets left. Would love to have you. It's a private tour of the sanctuary, an all-level yoga class by moi with a wonderful assistant named Courtney, who's been with us the past few years. And Mama Wilson will be in tow. She'll be in from Oklahoma. And then the next day is the event that I've been talking about since February, and that is TDJ Soirée. And we went over yesterday to tour the space at Elizabeth's. I've been there quite a few times before and held events there before, but, it'd been a few years, so it was so lovely to go and just kind of soak up the energy there. It's just absolutely stunning. And so if you're interested in joining us, would love to have you. 2 tickets left. We have an amazing community of women coming in from Colorado, LA, Oklahoma, Mama Wilson, New York, New Jersey, and of course the DC area. So would love, love, love to have you with us if you're interested. Also, TDJ Live. It's our next free online event happening June 23rd. And if you're in the mood to escape to Tuscany, July 13th through the 20th to Italy, we have 4 spots left. And then last but not least, for what I have planned this year is September 21st and 22nd in Montreal, Canada, where I'll be doing some pieces of Luna Yoga's advanced teacher training. And it's open to drop in, so you're welcome to come in. And we're going to be talking about mindfulness, creativity, and yoga business. All right, so our dear Christy. She is an independent fine jewelry designer in San Francisco. She specializes in wedding rings, engagement rings, and modern jewelry essentials, so you can wear meaningful reminders of all of your special celebrations and milestones. She's proud to be a certified San Francisco Green Business and has been featured in The Knot, Design Sponge, Brides, and San Francisco magazines. Connect with her at Christy Natsumi, natsumi.com. Welcome, Christy.
Hi, Kimberly.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun to talk to you.
Yeah, it's crazy to have a full circle moment.
Well, and it's funny, Christy, like I've seen you popping up, on Instagram and whatnot. And I guess I haven't seen you since the Tranquility Tour when we were out there in 2013.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is how many years ago? That was quite a few years ago, 6 years ago. And you just kept popping up and I was like, how have I not done a podcast with her? Oh, I don't know, but I'll reach out. And then, it's like a year would pass and I was like, what am I doing? I got to reach out to Miss Christy. So I'm excited to have you on today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is super fun.
So you are an independent fine jewelry designer in San Francisco, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I remember this journey quite vividly, how this all began. But can you talk to our listeners about like how does one get started and become a fine jewelry designer? Like tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, I usually have like a little bit of a truncated version that, but I was thinking about talking to you today and I was like, oh my God, like a lot of what Kimberly was doing and how, all of that kind of fell into place was pretty like a huge linchpin in my story about become like where I am today. And I was like, oh, I should like tell a longer story. So you're getting the longer story this time.
Awesome.
But yeah, I was living in DC. This was, I guess, over 10 years ago. I was studying to, a pre-med psych major. I was working in a doctor's office. I remember vividly that I had just taken the MCAT, which is the entrance exam for applying to med school. And I had just moved into an apartment building around the corner from the old P Street studio. And I was like, like I need some kind of like, I just had like so much anxiety and, just it felt like things were really stuck. So it's like, oh, yoga, I've never tried that before, but maybe I should. And then, being a college student, I'm like, that would be great to like be able to get a couple, free yoga classes and like, help clean the studio. So that was like my entrance into the tranquil space, Kimberly Wilson world. And then you were holding a creativity class. I think it was a couple weeks long or even like a month or two, based on the Artist's Way. And for some reason I was like, all right, that sounds cool. Like I had never thought, I was really artistic in much of a way. I'd never, taken an art class or, studied in like taken any kind of jewelry related class or at all at that point. And it was just kind of like a moment in a shift where like, oh, like everybody is creative and that might be something that I have within me. And for my artist date for that class, I went to a beading class. I don't know if that bead shop in DuPont Circle is still there.
Bedazzled. It just closed.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
I know. Had a long run though.
Yeah, but I know. But yeah, I took a beading class there for the artist studio or artist date. And I was like, oh yeah, like I kind of really like this. And then, I think through the studio I had met Arwa and she was, doing her own jewelry thing and recommended or wanted to go to this class, metalsmithing class, I think in Arlington. And she was like, why don't you come with me? I was like, all right. And we went to the class and then that was where I took my first metalsmithing class and I actually met my husband in that class, or my now husband. And, that was kind of the intro to like all of this, craziness that is, kind of the focal point of my life now. So yeah, it's crazy. And then I don't think at the time I was like, I want to make a business out of it. But while all of that was happening, I had like started to work for you in a little bit more, doing more things, aside from the studio work. And I don't know, you just kind of like made it seem really fun and easy. And you're like, like, why don't you just put some stuff you made on a table during Christmas? And I'm like, I can do that. And like, people would want it. And I don't know, it was just like a whole kind of mind-boggling experience of like, I think you kind of had created a container that was like not so, I don't know, serious, and like it was more of a lighthearted, like, tried and see kind of attitude, and that kind of like eased my way into that, and I think I had, and then after all of that, I kind of decided to leave doing the medical path, and then kind of started to seriously think about, oh, maybe like this is something that I really like to do, and how can I like incorporate that into making it something that is, a business and that could sustain itself. And at first that looked very different from what I am doing now. That kind of was like the impetus for everything. So yeah, thank you. I don't think I've ever had a formal place and, to say like, thank you, but yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's super interesting how things work out.
And listeners, if you're like, what did she do for you? Oh my gosh, what did she not do? Okay, Christy, do you remember you helped with and you modeled in many of the early photo shoots, and I'll try to find some photos to maybe see if I can put them in the show notes, because you were adorable. And then, oh my gosh, I remember you watered our garden when we were gone, and you got eaten by mosquitoes, and you walked Louie, and you tried to take him into a post office, and we're told no. And oh my gosh, but what didn't you do? I mean, you helped so much really with Tranquility and with online stuff, and you were just like a godsend for, what's it, a year and a half, maybe 2 years?
Yeah, something like that. I think given like what I was doing beforehand with like working at a doctor's office and things like that, where like, you have a list of things you do. You don't like go out of those things. And that's it, and I was very used to that kind of job of being told what to do. And then like, and then you clock out and that's it. But like, I think working for you was like a great prep for, owning my business down the road. Like every day was different. And you just had like this great approach to, or what seemed to be a great approach to like, like you're very confident about your vision. But like, you hold the kind of the outcomes loosely. So, it's like, oh, we're gonna go check out this trade show in New York, or we're gonna like do this trunk show, or I found a designer, or photographer, let's go take photos at his house. or like you're gonna try to fit a whole photography studio into your apartment. I'm like, all right, cool, let's see how this goes.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, so not every day the same. And then you would have come home after you're done working your normal job, and then you'd have like probably 100 emails from me, and then this, and then this, and then this. Yeah. Right. I mean,
yeah, no, but like, I was thinking I don't think I remember any particular task in very specific detail, but, it's kind of like the times that were like ancillary to what we were doing that kind of stick out, like, walking Louis and, not him just kind of like deciding not to want to move forward anymore and carrying him back home to your place, or when we've been stuck on a Chinatown bus from New York at 3 a.m. somewhere in Delaware, coming back from New York once. And I think one time I was over at your place, and then of course Bernard and Matisse were there, and then all of a sudden you came back and we couldn't find Matisse and I felt horrible, and we still couldn't find Matisse. And then, like, maybe even like a day later, he was in the closet outside. Or like how Bonnard would always be on something that I needed to like open or use or whatever. So
oh my gosh, that's so funny. I totally remember that about Matisse. We're like, should we put signs up in the neighborhood? Like, what could have happened?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, he was in a hallway closet. Oh my gosh. Well, you know what's crazy about that trip, too, that we took to New York and the Chinatown bus broke down? You had a trip to Japan, I think, that next day.
Yeah,
and you were like, I gotta
right.
make my flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going home to Japan for the holidays, I think. And yeah, and I was on a bus somewhere at 3
Right.
a.m. with you.
Yes.
We're like,
yes.
all right, we'll see how it goes.
Oh my gosh.
It just like, it was a great lesson in like, you know, like things are never what they seem from the outside in terms of like, there is no such thing as having things, you know, that's part of the fun of it too. So fun to think about all this stuff.
I know, my gosh. And I'm sure we could go through, there's probably a laundry list.
I know.
But, you know, I'm curious. So with your, you know, transition, right, to San Francisco and then really diving into this full time, I mean, so, you know, you started dabbling in it here in DC. And then when did you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to go for this? Was it when you got to San Francisco, or was it a few years into your time out there?
When I was in DC, I had started using a lot of beads and, you know, incorporating things that I had been taught through the workshops that I'd taken in DC. And I think that was kind of during the time when Etsy was just kind of starting off. So I had put some of my work on Etsy and had a couple sales and was like, oh, you know, this could be something that I could really dive into. So I think by that time I was living with my boyfriend / now husband, and we're both kind of more from the West Coast. His family's down in LA, and I had lived kind of in the Bay Area for a little bit before, and the West Coast felt like closer to family. So, and there wasn't anything keeping us on the East Coast. So we started talking about that move, and then I was like, well, what am I going to do? There was a great technical jewelry school in San Francisco, which has now since closed, but that seemed like a great opportunity to kind of dive into that. So I came to San Francisco in mind with starting and taking that course. So in DC, I was waiting tables, saved up for the class. We decided that we were ready to move. So we, you know, took our time going cross country, I think about a month and a half, which was a great experience. Came to San Francisco, and then I started taking the technical school called Revere Academy. And at first it was really hard. Like, it was pretty surprising now that I think about it, like having only taken a couple workshops in this kind of technical jewelry making with metals and fine jewelry. It's like, oh wow, that was a pretty gutsy move to make. But you know, I don't know. I just felt like, all right, this is what we're doing. The class was fun and it wasn't super long, but the timing though coincided with the recession. And after I finished the class, there weren't any places hiring basically for what I had just gone to school for. And so that was kind of tough. And I did find sales / admin job in the industry for a wholesale stone dealer. And in between I was practicing and, you know, honing the skills that I had learned on my own, and waiting tables and you know, it's kind of like waiting for like an opportunity / job to open up, which it didn't. And so after a few years of that, I was like, well, I guess that just means that, maybe I give this a shot on my own. And that was kind of the impetus for starting the business, is partially because by that point I had worked for you and then another mom and pop type of business. And when you're not having to make all of the decisions of the business every day, it seems doable from the outside, right? And I was like, like it looks pretty straightforward. And then you jump in and you're like, oh, this is way, way harder than it actually looks. But by that time, you're kind of in it and you're like, all right, well, let's try to make this work. So, you start with what you have, and what I had in the beginning is totally different from what I have in my shop now. And obviously, even investing in materials for fine jewelry is really expensive. And it's not like a service-based business where you can kind of have a low overhead. So, I started with making things that were with less precious metals, silver, not many stones, slowly starting to do a lot of custom work because, you're making something together with a client and you don't really have to have a full case of inventory. So kind of get creative in ways of like how to make this work. The cogs start turning and you kind of adjust as you go. And the iteration of the pieces on the site right now is where I'm at. And obviously there's more things that I want to do. But yeah, it's not a very clear cut path, but it's been super fun to have the opportunity to try it.
Well, I'm curious, like, what does a typical day look like? Because one thing you just said that, I hadn't really thought about is, the overhead. It's not like you have, for me, right? I have so much kind of fabric lying around that, is expensive, but it's not gold. And so, there's just so many sorts of just challenges I would think of that go into the design, the management of customers, the customer service, the social media, the getting yourself out there. I don't know if you do trade shows or trunk shows. And so like, what does a typical day kind of look like for you? Like, do you have like Monday is creation day, Tuesday is customer service day, or is every day an amalgam of it all?
Oh gosh, I really, really try hard to chunk my time. And I know you're a huge fan of chunking your time too. But yeah, sometimes things happen and you have to adjust your whole day. So I have like an ideal way of how I would like to have my days. It works out some of the time. And other times it doesn't. And you kind of have to be okay with it. And one thing that I recently heard somebody talking about is how like you plan out your day, but we often don't set aside time to like react to things that were unexpected. And I think that has made planning my day a little bit more easeful because you plan it and then like, you don't get to everything because of things that had to be taken care of that day. And then you feel bad because you don't get to the things that you were planning to do. So building in like an hour or two of taking care of business time, I think has been super helpful. So, but I have really tried to set expectations with my clients about like when I can meet, when I will be on email, when they won't probably hear from me. And that's helped structure my week in terms of like, okay, I meet, with clients Tuesdays and Thursdays. And, I know that I will be distraction free on, the other 3 days. So having those general rules in place has been super helpful.
Yeah, it is. It's like, being able to juggle so many different hats at once, it's, because you don't have a department, you don't have a shipping department, like creating department, like, a web design department in the back, so it's like, yeah, it's a lot of hats to be wearing.
Yeah. And I think in part, where my business is now is, I don't like to say one person show because I have a lot of people that help me. My husband does the website and, I have an accountant and there's so many people that I rely on for support, but I do not have any employees. So the business has been structured in a way that I can continue to have an income based on the amount of hours I can work and what I can produce in that time. So right now, custom work up until now has been a great opportunity for me to work with clients one-on-one. It is a little bit of a higher price point, but it allows me to stay focused on the quality and get immediate feedback on my work and designs and, and not to have a lot of inventory on hand. So it was kind of a solution I came up with to consciously build the business like that based on the resources and time and investment I could make into the business. And, it doesn't mean that it has to look like that or will continue to look like that. But I think just being in business is like you're trying this and then shifting and then trying another thing and shifting. And so things are constantly changing based on like both your business needs and your personal needs. And even like what makes you happy and excited changes over time too. So adjusting your business and shifting it based on that, I think is also really important too.
Well, yeah, I love the piece too about the custom work. And, if you think back to our early days of working together and all the inventory we had on hand, do you remember my little house and we had like just bins filled with clothes, right? And now, I have a little bit more inventory on hand than I typically do because I did a trunk show last fall. And so I had to have inventory made for it. But, typically it's now made to order. So when an order's placed, the item is created. And then if people want small tweaks, like, can you make it shorter? Can you do a long sleeve? It's easy to do because everything's custom made. And you're right. It's so great because there's less inventory. People get exactly what they want. It's a more customized experience. And I think people really appreciate that.
Yeah. Right now, I'm kind of in this interesting transition where that's been working fantastic. I've met a lot of great clients and gotten kind of feedback on what people are looking for. And now based on all of that knowledge, I can start to kind of have a baseline of designs that I love working on and that I love the look of. And then kind of rehoning that customer experience, not to make it so that like anything under the sun can be made, but like saying, okay, here's the base of like things that are really exciting to me. And let's start here if you really like my look and, if you want to work with me and then we can build up from there. And it kind of has helped me streamline the process a little bit more so that it's not as super customer service heavy in terms of reinventing the aesthetic and look every time. So it's interesting that it is constantly readjusting and that's the exciting part.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like no day is the same, right? It's not Groundhog Day with having your own business, especially as a solopreneur.
One of the things I really admire about you is that you're very specific in your aesthetic. You know what you like. And I think earlier when I first started, I definitely did have shiny object syndrome, in which like, that person's doing this and that person's doing that. And, this looks like this might, be a style that might sell well. And all of that is interesting. And I think when you're first starting out, it's really important to try out all of those things and see what feels best. But then like really honing in and saying like, all right, this is me, and being confident with the look and the aesthetic and the values also really important too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great reminder. And, Christy, one other thing that I was curious about is, do you find, San Francisco just seems to be filled with creative folks, right? And anytime I'm out there, I'm always like, oh my gosh, everybody loves San Francisco, right? And kind of New York, it has a similar vibe where you're like, how can you not live there and be creative? But I'm curious, do you feel like San Francisco, you've been there, almost a decade now. Do you feel like it has fueled your creative spark? Do you feel like you find a lot of inspiration there? Or, kind of where are you having made this move from the east to the west coast?
Yeah. So San Francisco wasn't really new in the sense that, I was familiar with the Bay Area. I had been here before. But getting a chance to like be in the city and kind of like feel the vitality of the city was really exciting. And I think a decade ago, there was just like this great kind of entrepreneurial energy. And I've met so many great creative people here, and there's a great sense of community, and particularly within the world that I operate in, it's very refreshing to find other business owners and colleagues where they, we're very open with like who we work with or like where we source things. And it's a very supportive, open community that is not competitive in terms of like, like I don't want to share my secrets because you're going to taking business away from me. It's more of that, like, if one person does better, everybody does better, mentality. And that's been a huge asset to have, even with like calling somebody up and saying, hey, like, is this, usually how this happens or is it wrong? Or, just like having people to ask questions and, also share experiences with and, vent with, is also been great. And the last 3 years, I've actually shared a studio, in downtown. So that's been, also amazing as well, in terms of being in a community with people doing similar things. So that's been great. I think there are some things that I will likely want to change soon. So there is another shift in the air. And it's interesting that I'm talking to you at this juncture, because 10 years ago, that was a huge shift. And I think there will be some changes that will happen sometime this year as well. Similar types of lessons coming up, but at a deeper level. So, but San Francisco has on the whole been really great. Despite a lot of changes and a lot of difficulties cities tends to have, I've been really super grateful to have had the opportunities that I've had here.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch you flourish there, really. It's like, and not that you couldn't have done that here, but I do think there is something for people about a shift in space and, that just can make such a difference. And so I'm just so proud of you.
No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it goes both ways, right? Because you don't want to wait to have everything on the outside be quote unquote perfect for you to do the work you need to do. But at the same time, the space you are in really affects your well-being and how you approach life as well. So it's great if you're feeling like you need a little bit of an inspiration to kind of change a little bit of something on the outside and see how that kind of changes how you feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes it's just a haircut. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
It can be. And Christy, my last question for you is, of course, the name of this podcast is Tranquility du Jour. And so I'm curious for you, how do you find tranquility in your everyday?
There is the San Francisco Zen Center, actually close by. I've recently started trying to do some meditation there and bringing mindfulness to the things that I'm doing without being so caught up in what the next thing is has been a great recent lesson for me. And to be able to, sit at my workbench and not be thinking of the next thing, but be completely focused on the task at hand and practicing being present in that moment has kind of renewed my work and my approach to making and creating again. So I would say that is a great recent lesson that has been valuable to me.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Christy. It's such a treat to have you on the show, and congrats
thanks.
Again.
Yeah. It's been great to see all of the things you've done since we worked together, and hopefully we can meet in real life soon.
Absolutely. Now, in the show notes, you'll find links to her website, her Pinterest, Instagram, and Facebook. Also, a reminder, use code Tranquility to save 20% through June 15th on her website, which is such a generous discount. Because as you heard in the podcast, it's not like, keeping like lots of gold and things like that around, from an inventory perspective is as easy as like your basic widget. And so I really appreciate her offering this to our listeners. And also, those of you who are coming to the soiree, you will have the opportunity to be in a raffle to receive a gorgeous necklace that she has created. So lots of fun, beautiful work that she does. And I feel so proud of her, like a little bit of a mama bear, despite the fact I had nothing to do with the amazing person that she has become and the work she's doing. But it just feels like so sweet to have watched her growth and evolution. So definitely check out Miss Christy. Now, Tranquility du Jour, of course, you can find us online. Of course, the daybook is going to be available on Amazon in the next 24-ish hours. Year of Tranquility, which was the last book I did, it came out in January, has 5 bonuses. And you can find out more about that at KimberlyWilson.com/YOT. And also, I recently did a blog post and it's also on our daybook page on the website, where I talk about, okay, what's the difference between Year of Tranquility and the daybook? And really the big thing is Year of Tranquility has 12 essays, and it does not have the 60 weekly layouts. So it's more of like a big picture sort of planner, right? So it's more like, okay, your months and your year versus the daybook, which is months, year, and days, right? Many days, 60 weeks of days. So that's really the big difference between the two. And the daybook does not have these 12 essays and the 4 practices that follow each essay. So you can learn more about that over on the daybook page. And that is linked, of course, in the show notes. And you can, of course, if you're interested, find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Watch for a new Tea with Kimberly video coming out. I did one last week before we headed out to the forest for a little bit of forest bathing over the long weekend. And it's on doing a mindful check-in. And I'll have a link to that also in the show notes for you, in case you haven't seen it yet. And I hope it's helpful, and I'll continue to do more and more of these. And also there's a link to Tranquility, my 6 books, the app for this podcast for iPhones and Androids, and then, of course, reading about my passion for animals. So if you have a moment to share anything that you may have learned or takeaways about this podcast, or to review it over on iTunes, would be so grateful. There's a link in the show notes, or to pen a review of any of my books on Amazon or Goodreads. You can also find links to those in the show notes. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Love being with you, and wish you a wonderful weekend ahead. And those of you coming in for the soiree, I cannot wait to welcome you. Namaste.